Hi, all. Welcome to the second session of the third series of free training. So, the agenda for today's session is understand the application performance with Apdex course, monitor code flows across applications via distributed tracing, pinpoint to the problematic elements in your application code, and visualize dependencies in your application architecture with automated service map. So, before discussing the topic in our agenda, let us start off with why an application performance monitoring is needed. So, let us consider this scenario. So, where there was an ambitious e commerce website who aspired to revolutionize the online shopping. So, this website had a range of products, intuitive interface, and also user friendly checkout process. But however, some of the users reported some slowness during the page loading, and some of them faced some errors and during the checkout process, and also that made them to lead to abandon the cart, and this leads to the customer dissatisfaction. So these are all some of the issues that were faced, like difficulty in capturing the real-time information, complex set of codes, then highly complex infrastructure where some of the issues faced by the developer team. So, in this scenario, when accessing an e commerce website and purchasing it from the online store, and on the completion of selection of the items, when a customer is attempting to place their order, and in case if the page portal is slow and encounters issues like portal taking a long time to load or getting redirected to a different page or showing some error codes, could be an issue which will lead to the loss of potential customers from accessing the application, and leading to a loss of business for the developers who are working in this application will be unsure of the root cause. So, in this scenario, the demand for using an application has increased, which has also led to the complexity in its development. So, hence, it is necessary for the developers and also the IT team who are working in the application to ensure that the website will be a bug free and also handle the load in the application's database to provide a better service for their users. Let us see some of the recent facts that were gathered by our ManageEngine team. First fact shows that the customer experience being the top priority for 71 or percentile of the large enterprises. So using the Apdex score, we can gauge the customer experience and utilize the transaction traces capabilities in the tool to proactively identify the issues even before they are being reported by the customers. Second, second fact highlights the common challenges faced by many business in understanding the complex relationship between the different components within their application. So the service map in APM Insight tool will automatically map the relationship between the various components such as the servers, the databases, and any third-party services in the complex application architecture, and will provide more insights into how the different elements will be interacting and impacting the overall performance. So these are some of the latest trends in the application performance monitoring. First one being the cloud native application. So as we know recently, um, we have moved the applications to the cloud environment. So application performance monitoring solution are adapting to the monitor cloud native architectures and microservices and containers for scalability and flexibility. The second one is artificial intelligence for IT operation capabilities. By including the artificial intelligence for IT operations, will enable anomaly detection, predictive insights, and also automation will help in enhancing the problem resolution. The third one is user centric monitoring. So, with a growing focus on monitoring user centric metrics such as the page load times, interactions, and satisfaction, will help the business prioritize improvements and will ensure to improve the customer satisfaction. The fourth one is application observability. So, traditional application performance monitoring is gaining more insights into the application behavior using metrics and also offer deeper insights into the distributed traces, logs for better troubleshooting and also analyzing the root cause of the issue. The last one being the full stack performance monitoring. So, beyond the traditional performance monitoring, application performance solutions now include full stack observability like monitoring the infrastructure, databases, and application code to gain a holistic view of the entire system's performance. Let us see some of the benefits of modern versus traditional approach in building an application. First one is the application availability. So we are aware that there is a dependency on the application in our day-to-day life. So with the increasing dependency on application and wide usage of it has made the application to be always available for the users. So a group of microservices are built instead of a large monolithic application. And the development of the technologies like containerization and load balancing has helped the organization to achieve this high availability. The second one is cost reduction. With the advent of the cloud computing capabilities, organizations no longer need to spend more money to build a large infrastructure and thereby can save their capital expenditure. The fourth one is compliance tracking. So every applications are developed based on a particular standards. So depending on the industrial standards like HIPAA for healthcare, FIPS for USA government, we can easily track if an application follows all those standards. And the last being the operational efficiency. So as we had discussed about the dependency mapping, with which you can easily identify the faulty component of the application more quickly in a single click and identify the down application faster for instant diagnosis of the problem. So far we have discussed why an application performance monitoring is necessary. In Applications Manager, the performance monitoring tool is called APM Insight. So the APM Insight will give you an understanding in the way your application is behaving for the end users who are accessing it. By a complete end-to-end transaction monitoring across your entire web application will help you to avoid any performance issues. Also, you can analyze the root cause of problems much faster by performing the first level troubleshooting. So the supported technologies in APM Insight are Java, Node.js, .NET Core, Microsoft.NET, PHP, and Ruby Rails. So before moving on to the agenda, we hope some of you might be already using the APM Insight tool. So we have recently made some major enhancements and also brought in some new features and revamped the entire APM Insight UI. So as you can see in the Home tab, we have added availability filter and we have added the agent type icon which will make you to understand if the application is using the Ruby or .NET or Java etc which technology, and you have an option to custom the attribute filter and also the inline filter, and also the trend graph will be shown for the performance metric like the errors, the response time and throughput. In the overview tab, uh, we have the availability and health being changed, and the agent type icons are also included here in the UI. And the monitor actions is one new feature where you will be able to edit the monitor, enable any reporting for the performance metric. If you want to change the display name, that can be done for configuring the alarms, and to check the recent alarms that have occurred in the monitor, and to put the monitor in unmanaged state or delete it. These options are available here. And you also have an option for the duration, to check the data, which time period you want to see the data. That option is there, and the agent last communicated time, and also the widget. So here under the transaction tab, we have included the key transaction intimation. Under the traces tab, we have the tree view with the progress indicator, and the pop-up floater for SQL, and also the exception trees. So these are some of the factors that are affecting the application performance. The first being the response time. So when a transaction is made by an user in the web application, the request will be sent from the application layer, which will travel through the transaction and also the network layers, and will hit the application server, and this request will be served back to the end user. In case of slow connection to the web application, can lead to the network traffic, and the transaction will consume a longer time, which can lead to a poor response time. The second one is application code. So an application is developed using certain technology which can have a large number of bugs affecting the functions and the performance of the application. The bugs in the code can cause exception that might result in the transaction execution failures. So the stack trace can be used to identify these code issues to improve and fix the application code. The third one is the memory. So high usage of the web applications and not optimized application at the code level can cause some high consumption of the memory from its allocated space in the machine, leading to the memory leaks and out of memory. The last one being the database queries. For instance, the database calls and the queries pertaining to any specific transaction could become highly loaded, which can affect the performance of the application. Hence, for the developers working in the application, can be dependent on this APM Insight monitoring tool to keep an eye on the factors that are affecting the performance. Let us see the functioning of this APM Insight tool. The APM Insight, it is an agent-based monitoring tool. The first step involves deploying the agent on the application server where the applications are running. These agents are responsible for collecting the performance data and sending it to the applications manager for analysis. The agent residing in the application server will use the bytecode instrumentation method and start tracking individual user transactions as they flow through the application, and send it to the applications manager at a fixed time interval. So this will allow for detailed monitoring of transaction performance and helps us to identify any bottleneck or performance issues. So the tool will provide a code level visibility, monitor the slow database queries and their performance by capturing the real-time user interaction with the application. You can then configure the alert and notification based on the predefined thresholds for all these performance metric that impact the performance of the application. When the application performance exceeds these thresholds, the tool will send alerts to the IT team, which will help the developers and also the IT team to identify the areas that needs more improvement in the performance, like the application code, the database related issues, and the page load times, which will help in enabling them proactively address the issues and minimize the downtime. So these are the key performance indicators in the APM Insight tool. Let us see one by one. The first one is Apdex score. So this Apdex, it is a numerical measure of user satisfaction with the performance of the application's response time. The second one is response time. It measures the average time it takes for the application to respond to a user's request for the transaction across the application. So lower the response time are generally more desirable. The third one is request. The count of the total number of requests made to the application within a specific time frame, and this will help to decide the overall workload and usage of the application. The fourth one is data throughput. So this indicates the amount of data in bytes transferred or processed in and out in the network request by the application during the monitoring period. So this helps us in understanding the application's data handling capabilities. And the last one being the exceptions. This can help us to track the number of exception errors or failures that has occurred during the cycle of transactions in a selected duration processing of a request. So these exceptions could be of various types, like errors such as server errors, timeouts, or other issues that are affecting the application's normal operation. So let us get into the first topic of our today's agenda: understand application performance with Apdex scores. The based on the application responsiveness, the Apdex, it is categorized as satisfied, tolerating, and frustrated. So the satisfaction here in this category, it represents the highest level of user experience, where the application's response time is between the satisfied threshold and the excellent threshold. So users in this category are generally satisfied with the application's performance. The second one is tolerating. So the tolerance category will indicate the application's response time in between the tolerating threshold and also the satisfied threshold. So users in this category might tolerate the performance but may not be entirely satisfied as under the satisfied category. The last one being the frustration. So here in this category, it represents the lowest level of user experience, where the application's response time is below the tolerating threshold. So users in this category are likely to be more frustrated with the application's performance as it does not meet their expectation. So the tracking of application performance with the Apdex score. Application Performance Index or Apdex score is a standard metric to measure the user satisfaction with application response time. The Apdex scale ranges from 0 to 1, with 1 being the best score representing the excellent user satisfaction. So the formula used for the calculating of Apdex is the total samples, which is nothing but the total number of user transactions. So the sum of satisfaction count and the half of the tolerating count over the total samples will give us the value of the Apdex. These are some of the advantages of monitoring the application performance with the Apdex score. The first one is user-centric performance measurement to understand the application behavior, which will help you to understand how the application performance directly impacts the user experience and enables you to prioritize the improvement. The second advantage of the Apdex core is easy interpretation of complex performance data with a common performance metric, which will simplify the complexity of the data into a single and also easily understandable metric by providing a clear standardized way to assess the application performance. The third advantage is you can benchmark and compare the performance levels of different applications, allowing you to identify the high performing application, leading to consistent improvements across your IT environment. The fourth one is proactive issue identification and prioritization of the code optimization. So, when the performance falls below the acceptable levels, Apdex score will help you to identify the critical transaction with low scores, and also it will highlight the areas of code optimization. So when an alert is getting triggered, it will help in enabling the quick issue identification and also improve the key transaction that are impacting the user satisfaction. The last advantage of the Apdex score is the historical Apdex trend data, which will allow you to analyze the performance pattern over the time, helping in understanding the performance trend and also identifying improvements for ensuring a consistent positive user experience. So by now you would be more interested on configuring the key business transactions to monitor the entire performance of the application effectively. In this slide, we shall see on configuring the key transaction of your business operation. So there could be a high volume of activities made in the application, and all the transaction would be captured, among which you can select the key transactions that you want to monitor in it and set threshold based on the response time of the transaction. The second topic in our agenda is monitor code flows across the application via distributed tracing. In a microservice architecture, it is necessary to monitor the transactions that are made between two or more applications or services. So, with the distributed tracing, you can track the transaction made between two or more applications. Let us understand how tracking is done in the distributed tracing. So when an API request is made by an application to another application, the APM Insight will add an HTTP header containing the metadata which is required to track the request. So if the APM Insight is enabled in the other application, it will then process that HTTP header and return the tracking information to its caller via response headers. If the other application in turn calls another service or another application, the header propagation will continue and trace all the paths that are taken by the original application across the distributed system. So using this data, we will be able to monitor the start time, that is when the transaction has initiated, the response time taken for the transaction to respond within the application, and the name of the transaction and the applications. So by clicking the expand tree view, which you can see in the image, the application name, you can view the method calls and also the code blocks that has taken a significant amount of time to complete the request, and this will enable you to monitor the calls made between two or more application and narrow down the problem. So auto scaling, it is an automated way of managing the resources for your applications. So imagine you have a website or application that are running in the cloud environment. when the application automatically scales up due to high user interaction in the site. And to handle this extra traffic, a new instance will get added. However, when these applications are scaled down due to lesser user interaction, these newly added instances will become unused and are still retained. So this will lead to the license being consumed by the unused instances, resulting to new instances not being added for monitoring. Hence, with the help of this auto scaling mode in APM Insight, you can overcome this scenario by automatically unmanaging or deleting the unused instances in the cloud environment. So the supported cloud environment for auto scaling are Azure, AWS, GCP, and Docker. The third topic in our today's agenda is pinpoint to the problematic elements in your application code. Here, let us see the need for eliminating issues in the problematic code with an image. So, as you are aware, the stack trace represents the movement of an application during the execution of a program. When the Java application throws an exception, the stack trace gets logged with it. By analyzing the stack trace provided by the APM Insight, developers can pinpoint the exact line of code and the sequence of the function calls leading to the issue. So this information will help them to understand the root cause of the problem and can make the code optimization or bug fixes to eliminate the issue and improve the application performance. With the stack trace, developers can efficiently troubleshoot and also resolve the problems within the application code so that it can ensure a smoother and also more reliable user experience. Let us see the new feature, the context based monitoring for the Java based applications. So this is one of the new feature that we have introduced in the latest versions of Applications Manager. So here in this scenario, you can enable the context based monitoring for your Java application. So this will allow the tool to track and trace the individual user transactions, capturing the data on how each registration transaction flows through your application server. Let us see, your application server has three Java applications running on it. So by default, all these transaction of the applications will be coming from the same application server as shown collectively under the web transaction tab in the tool. So in this image, as you can see, the Tomcat application, it is the application monitor name, and the Jetpet store sample and sample web page are three contexts that are running on the same application servers. The transaction of all these three Java applications are listed out in the web transaction tab. Now, with the context based monitoring, you can monitor the performance of all the individual applications that are running in the same application server separately. So, this will help you to analyze your application performance. So, which means that by enabling the context based monitoring, transactions of JPEG store, sample web app, and sample can be viewed separately. And the last topic in our agenda is visualize dependencies in your application architecture with automated service map. So what is a service map? As we had discussed in at the time of initial presentation, it is necessary to understand the complex business architecture. So using this service map, it will provide a complete overview of the application infrastructure along with its connection to the dependent resources. So the main purpose of having a service map is to easily identify the status of your application and also the instances, and monitor the metrics like response time, the throughput, and status of the connection. Detect and also troubleshoot the application problems before your end users are getting impacted, and also to know the number of failed request count. So the service map, it is of three types. One is the map view, the other one is the table view, and the third one is the graph view. So here in the map view, it will provide the way of analyzing the topological view of the application, and along with its instances are represented in the central node. So as you can see in the image, the OP Manager probe is the central node to which its HTTP calls, the PG-SQL are all connected. So the green dot, it indicates the status of those individual components, if they are in down state or running. And also, as you can see, the instant state are shown in green, which means that if the instance is available. Red, it indicates that the instance is down or not available. And the purple, it indicates that the particular instance is in the scheduled maintenance. And the blue one, it indicates if that instance is in unmanaged state. So now let's look out how all these can be achieved in the APM Insight Monitor. And we will discuss some topics related to reporting and configuring alarms through the UI. So as you can see, this is the new revamped APM Insight Monitor. So where in the overview tab, it will provide an overview information about the different key performance metrics like the Apdex score, response time, request, the data throughput, and exception. And also you will be able to get an overview of the exception count, the response time broken by the components like the HTTP call, and transactions based on the Apdex score and errors. So all these are the overall data widget which will help you to understand the performance of the application. Under the individual tabs like the transaction, database, traces, JVM, we will be able to get more detailed information about the application performance. So here under the transaction tab, this will provide you uh, detailed information about the uh, details that are pertaining to the action which are consuming more longer time, and you can find out the frequently accessed actions, and this will also provide us a tier wise breakdown of the transaction response time from the application level to the individual transaction level. So as you can see, all these transactions are made which can be filtered, or you can, if you want to know the transaction based on the total response time, that can be selected. So based on the most high response time, those transaction will be listed along with their individual components. So here as you can see, here in this particular transaction, we can find out the recent traces and also the slowest traces. This will also provide us the response time which are broken by components like the application code for that particular transaction. In the overview tab, we had found the overall or overview of the entire performance, but here we will be able to find out for the individual transactions. As here in the database tab, all the database operations that are made will be monitored. So here you will be able to get the detailed performance metric to identify the slow database calls, the database usage, and the overall performance of the database with a detailed graphical and also a tabular representation. So when you click on this individual database operation, you will be able to view the list of web transactions that were performed by that particular operation. So for example, here I have selected this one particular database operation. So for that, I can find out the uh, database caller, the response time for that particular database operation, and also the request for that particular database operation. They all can be monitored from here. And the average response time taken for the database operation, I mean the individual database operation time, will be available. So this will make us to understand if that uh, performance is getting slowed down by any database operation. So the developers who are working in it will be able to optimize all this database queries. So here you can find some of the database operations have question marks, which means that in case if any operation has some critical data or some secure data, so they can be obfuscated. So under the traces tab, so here under the traces tab will provide you with the insights into the individual transactions that are running within your application. So all these transaction traces are snapshots of the transaction, which will help you to identify the performance bottleneck and drill down the transaction to pinpoint the cause of the trouble. So as you can see here in this particular transaction, these are the traces that are collected, which will let me know the method calls that are involved in that particular transaction. And also the stack trace can be also found here. So if you want to know the specific SQL statements that are used by the transaction, and the query running for it can be found under the SQL statement tab, which will help me understand the start time and the total time taken for the query to run, and the remote external calls that are running for that. And the other traces of the transaction can also be monitored over here. And since this is an JVM based monitor, so I will be able to monitor the JVM performance metrics pertaining to this particular trace. So like JVM CPU usage, the JVM classes count, the non-heap memory and the heap memory. So all this data will be available over here. And also you can find out the response code of that particular transaction, like if it is 200 or 400, 400, 401, the other response codes will also be fetched over here. And if it is a get or post method used, will also be available. Here under the JVM tab, the it will help you in monitoring your Java application. So the JVM tab will be available only for the Java based applications. So using this, you will be able to monitor the application code that are running in your JVM. So this JVM tab will help you to monitor the metrics that are crucial for your Java application, and will provide deep insights into the performance and represent them in tabular and also a graphical representation. So this will provide you a more visibility into how the various resources and the system parameters are working in the Java application performance. So these are the some of the performance metric related to the Java. So all the trend data can be captured and will be monitored over here. So under the garbage collector, you can find the PS mark sweep, PS scavenge data, and time spent for collecting the objects, and the instance split up can be fetched from here. And here in the threads, so we know that for the Java based applications, we'll use the using the thread for the data collections and all. So to determine the daemon threads, the live threads that are running, and the peak threads, or if there is how many sleeping threads, they all can be found over here. So in addition, you will be able to monitor the collection time of the live threads, the peak threads, and the sleeping threads, along with your CPU consumption as well. Under the configuration tab, you will be able to get the details of the um, Java based application. So the JVM name, the version of it, the PID, and the Java vendor. So all these details can be captured. Under the exception tab, it will help you monitor the need by providing detailed insight into the various exceptions that are occurring within the application. For example, in the exception tab, you will be able to identify the different type of exceptions and also the errors that are hindering. So here you can see these are some of the exceptions. So along with the count, the number of times these exceptions has occurred, you will be able to monitor. You can get the error codes that has occurred, and it's along with its count. You will be able to monitor the recent 5 exception traces. So when I click on that particular transaction name, it will take me to that individual trace tab, which will provide me the detailed data of that particular exception along with their trace details, and also the SQL statements. All these can be captured here. So uh, in this APM Insight Monitor, you can try to export the data of all these transaction database traces, JVM exception. So for the performance metric here under the APM Insight Monitor, you will be able to generate their report, which is an historical data. So depending on the time period that you are looking for, you will be able to capture all those data. So this will help you to analyze the behavior of that particular metric in your application, so that you can try to improve the performance of all those metrics. And also in addition, if you are looking for the snapshots of the transactions tab, since all these being a real-time data, you can export this data via the Excel, PDF, or CSV. So the tabular data only can be exported through the Excel, PDF, and CSV format. So that is available for the database. This is available for the traces, JVM exceptions. And here under the reporting, uh, using the trend analysis report, you will be able to monitor the recent trend, how the that particular metric is behaving. So when I select for, I want to know how the satisfied category of the application responsive is behaving. I will be able to capture that data. They will be archived in the database, and based on this I can understand the time when there was more number of satisfied users in the accessing the website, and also we will be able to know the time when there was more number of frustrated customers and their time in the website. So depending on this, we can try to check the performance of the application. So in addition, here under the monitor actions, you have the option for configuring the alarms. So as you know, the health will be providing you the overall uh, performance of the APM Insight monitor, and the availability will let you know if the particular application instance is up or in down state. So configuring an action to these two attributes will help you to monitor the availability and also the performance of the application. So in addition, you have an option for configuring the threshold for the key performance metrics that we had discussed earlier, like response time, the Apdex, the application responsive, frustrated, satisfied, tolerating, and also the error count. So for all these performance metric, you have an option for configuring the threshold. So all these metrics are depend. I mean, the health is dependent on all these performance metric. So whenever there is a breach in these threshold values, the developers and also the IT team, they will be notified for taking the necessary action to improve the performance. So let us see a quick recap. So we had discussed about tracking the application performance using the Apdex code. We had discussed about finding out the problems within your application code and tracking the transactions from one application to another application and debugging the issues using the distributed tracing. Then identify the problems in the code stack and how a service map will help you to identify the problems in the components that are connected to your application, so that you will be able to debug the complex architecture much more faster. So at last, we were able to discuss about configuring the alarms and also how reports can be generated for all the real-time data that are captured and for some of the performance metric in the APM Insight tool. Thank you for showing your interest in attending the webinar.